Okay, here we go. Get ready to turn left. Turn left, and then keep left. Keep left, and then turn left. Turn left. It's all over now.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is John Tapp with the Kenworth T680. So may the force be with you, because it's Star Wars Day in the truck. So as we start with Casper, Wyoming. So this is going to be for used packaging, and I hope BNSF will have food for me to deliver. So let's go get the used packaging and we'll get going.
Let's do this. Turn left. Keep right, and then turn right. Turn right. ready to turn left. Turn left. Keep right, and then exit right. Exit right. Caution, please mind the speed limit. Go straight on. Go straight on.
The 55-year-old media mogul faces 5 criminal counts: racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Prosecutors claim he directed his employees to solicit victims, solicit illegal substances, and protect his reputation. Combs, who says he's innocent, has been held without bail in Brooklyn since his arrest last September. Brazilian police say they foiled a bomb attack that had been planned for an open-air Lady Gaga concert held last night in Rio de Janeiro. Julia Carnedo has more.
According to Rio's police and the Ministry of Justice, the plan was being orchestrated on social media. A group was recruiting participants to carry out attacks at the concert with improvised explosives, aimed especially at LGBTQ fans. They set, quote, a collective challenge to gain notoriety online. Police say they managed to neutralize the plot, avoiding any panic or impact. They arrested 2 people and carried out 15 search warrants. Rio's free open-air concert on Copacabana Beach was bigger than Madonna's last year and historic for Lady Gaga. On social media, she said seeing the crowd of more than 2 million people, her biggest ever, took her breath away. For NPR News, I'm Julia Carneiro in Rio.
U.S. futures contracts are trading lower at this hour. Dow futures down about 0.3%. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Joyce Foundation, committed to advancing racial equity and economic mobility for the next generation in the Great Lakes region. Learn more at joycefdn.org. This is NPR.
Tonight on Houston Public Media, TV8, a night of all-new drama. At 7, it's called The Midwife, followed at 8 by the new masterpiece series, Miss Austen. Then at 9, it's new Marie Antoinette. All tonight on TV8.
We believe in your right to free information. Help protect trusted news and keeps us all informed by supporting Houston Public Media. Stand up for your right to information. Give today at houstonpublicmedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Hey y'all, it's the Sam Sanders Show from KCRW, your weekly guide to entertainment and pop culture. Thank you so much for checking out my show. This week, Marvel and its legacy, the good and the bad. There are some Marvel movies, Iron Man, Black Panther 1 and 2, that last Guardians of the Galaxy. Those films I love. But for the last few years, a lot of Marvel movies have been bad, in my opinion. And I've been wondering for a while now, has Marvel lost its way? There's so much Marvel content to keep up with these days, and Marvel's had more flops than they've wanted these last few years. But this weekend, maybe a chance to turn things around. There's a new Marvel film out. It's called Thunderbolts. I saw it. I liked it. And it might represent a Marvel reset.
Go straight on.
To discuss all of this, I am joined by 2 journalists who cover this stuff full-time. Los Angeles Times entertainment reporter Tracy Brown and Kyle Buchanan, who covers Hollywood and pop culture for the New York Times. Let's get into it. To start this Marvel conversation, as journalists who cover movies and cover Marvel, do you get tired of the Wither Marvel questions. Is Marvel in trouble? What's up with the MCU questions?
I feel like 'twas ever thus. Even when Marvel was becoming a really big thing, there was always the expectation that it would burn out at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been some bad Marvel movies in the past, you know, like not everything after that initial salvo of Iron Man 4, Captain America worked well. In fact, Iron Man 2, the second Thor movie, those weren't stellar releases either. But they always do manage to bounce back, even after a prolonged period of Marvel's in a tailspin. They had one of their biggest hits ever last year with Deadpool and Wolverine.
And then they had that new Captain America, Brave New World.
They had that. It wasn't one of their biggest hits ever. So that again puts us in a little bit of a fallow period. I think even Marvel would acknowledge it seems like they're trying to find their next best path forward. And when they were first kind of coming onto the scene and becoming a dominant phenomenon, it did feel that even though you had all of these different properties, it was all moving in a linear direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that in recent years, whether it's just fatigue, creative burnout, or maybe too many properties with all those Disney Plus series, it doesn't feel as dominant. There isn't an expectation that you've watched every Marvel property anymore.
Because who can do it?
And once you start tapping out of one or two Marvel series and Marvel movies, it's going to take something big to lure you back.
Okay. Tracy, same question to you. Do you get tired of this question?
Marvel in the beginning had to earn its MCU like grandeur, but there was always doubters from the beginning. So every little, like Kyle mentioned, you know, a lot of movies were not that good. People think about Endgame and Infinity War, and it's this bar, but they forget there's 20 years of kind of stumbling and figuring out along the way. So people remember like the height of Endgame and Infinity War, and they think everything after that should match it, but it's kind of impossible. One, because it took building blocks to get there, but also like
Go
how many
straight
things
on.
are like the cultures are now. Like we don't all go all in on anything. Like how many of us watch or talk about the same TV or movie like outside of Marvel? So like Marvel having to become dominant, right? People expecting Marvel to be dominant like that in a time where culture is so spread out. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. So I wanted to have this conversation after watching a movie trailer in the movies. I forget which movie I was watching, but before that, the trailer for the latest Captain America movie, Brave New World, came on the screen. And I love Anthony Mackie. I like his film work. I thought he was great in his Black Mirror episode. But that trailer started, and before I knew it, I was laughing.
Watch yourself. You're not Steve Rogers. You're right. I'm not.
It felt like farce. It felt absurd, bad, camp in all the wrong ways. And I wasn't wrong. This film came out to really bad reviews, and it underperformed at the box office. And after that film, I think I and a lot of other folks were asking the question, is Marvel washed? Are they washed? The question's being asked again as we go into Thunderbolts weekend. But to start, what rating would you give the MCU right now? Grade, status of health, some kind of report card on the health of Marvel after that movie and before this Thunderbolts one comes out this week.
Well, first of all, Sam, a little birdie told me that you saw that Captain America trailer before The Brutalist, which I can only imagine the cognitive dissonance.
Oh my God, because Tyler was there with me. My colleague Tyler was there with me, and he saw me go from the worst trailer of all time to one of the most self-indulgent films of all time. I had a day. Chinese theater, you owe me money.
But very different wavelengths. And I think to watch something like that where, you know, I mean, at least you can say, well, The Brutalist is aspiring to something massive. Was Captain America Brave New World? I think to a certain extent, it felt like they were just trying to tread water. And so that's why I would say right now, I feel like the MCU is grade B. You know,
grade B, okay.
Grade B because they're still going to make more money than almost anything that can be out there. There is still, you know, the imprimatur of Marvel counts for more than just about any name brand you've got that can entice people into a movie theater. But it doesn't feel like that dominant monoculture anymore. It doesn't feel like you have to see every Marvel movie. And
it doesn't feel like I want to see every Marvel movie.
Well, that's part of it, but I think that sometimes people would still see it out of obligation. And for the most part, for a little while, there was an almost Pixar level like roster of hits, and they were pretty good tentpole movies. There was the occasional clunker, and now there's maybe a bigger clunker ratio than people are used to.
So 1, you give it a B.
Yes.
2, that was the most casual use of the word imprimatur. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. Kudos on that.
I was gonna say, like, you're much nicer than I am. Maybe it's my Asian American mom, but like the MCU is right. I'm saying like B minus.
Oh, that's not it.
What would your Asian American mom say? What would your Asian American mom say?
Well, I mean, anything lower than an A minus is failed, right?
Well.
But same, like it's the first weekend is always there for. I think even the worst MCU entries that first weekend, it's still the top box office getter. People are still paying attention to it. Nobody likes feeling like they have to do homework before they go watch a movie, but a lot of people like feeling rewarded if they did. So
okay.
So they're still, they're still going. They're like, I put all this time into it, I might as well go.
All right.
But also, by the same token, I mean, I think you're right that people felt rewarded certainly when they were watching something like Infinity War or Avengers Endgame, because they saw all those movies.
Can I tell you my truth?
Go ahead.
I fell asleep in Endgame.
Did you?
I fell asleep in Endgame because they just kept bringing them out like a family reunion, and I'm like, let me guess, the good guys are gonna win. Like, let me take a nap.
Sure.
Let me take a nap.
An excellent prediction. But yeah, so I do think that, like, right now, there's this expectation of, like, there's a character from Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, are people reaching back that far?
The fact that they keep trying to make that happen.
The homework feels a lot more like homework now.
But like, even Captain America, Brave New World, that homework was Hulk movies. Like, I actually think Marvel TV is doing okay. Like,
But then there's so much more stuff to watch.
there is so much more stuff, but a lot of the things, I will say, a lot of the things I have enjoyed in the past 5 years, like post Endgame, more of it has been on television than in the box office.
All right, if you're just now joining me, I'm talking all about Marvel today. Here with me are Los Angeles Times entertainment reporter Tracy Brown and Kyle Buchanan. He covers Hollywood and pop culture for the New York Times. The big movie this weekend, at least Marvel hopes so, is Thunderbolts. It's kind of being positioned as a reset of sorts, a different kind of darker, edgier Marvel film.
There's something wrong with me. An emptiness. I thought it started when my sister died, but now it feels like something bigger.
And I went in expecting a reset from what I've been watching of Marvel. I want us to give away our reviews without giving away spoilers. I gotta say, even though I give Marvel right now maybe a C, I give Thunderbolts a B or a B+. It didn't disappoint me. I was able to follow the story not knowing too much MCU lore, and it looked good. It looked real slick, and I didn't see any bad CGI, which has plagued these Marvel films for years. But I'm wondering, y'all, Thunderbolts, quick review.
I think there is a great movie in Thunderbolts that comes to the fore a lot, and it's hemmed in by the demands for it to be a certain type of Marvel movie that sort of compromises it and brings it down to good a lot of the time.
I did feel like a lot of the time watching the movie, there were several minutes where I said to myself, I'd be laughing here if I knew the backstory, but I don't.
Yeah.
And I had to wait to get to the parts that could be universally understood by everyone there.
There is a great stripped-down movie about Florence Pugh's character, who is the main character.
I'd argue Julia Louis-Dreyfus captured my heart in this film.
Well, that's fair. But what I think, Florence Pugh is the protagonist, and she's terrific in it. The problem is there are so many other characters on her team that honestly the movie is less invested in. Some of the actors feel less invested in. And if they just stripped it down to make it more about Florence, I think it would be great.
Okay.
And you realize as the movie starts to put its pieces into play that it has to be about a team because it has to set up X and Y later on.
All this is, okay.
And that's very Marvel, and that's the problem a lot of the time.
Tracy?
I would say it's a solid B+ at least.
Okay.
If you, depending on what you saw before, you might give it an A-.
I mean, had I walked into that movie just seeing Captain America: Brave New World, I would have given Thunderbolts a Peabody.
Yeah, but it has all the things you want from a entertaining just blockbuster, right? It's fun.
Mm-hmm.
There's relatable stakes.
Mm-hmm.
There's more to it than the comic bookiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about it kind of goes back to relatable stakes. So there's a story at play that's not just we need to move this next piece of the MCU from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
Florence Pugh's a star, that definitely helps.
This is the thing, though. They're all stars. I was realizing it's a stacked cast. It's a really stacked cast. They've got some good people in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your grade for it?
I'll give it an A-.
You'll give it an A-.
It exceeded my expectations, even with my I'll watch anything with Florence Pugh in it mindset.
Yeah.
A-.
Okay. So then, is this movie going to change the narrative around Marvel?
No, I don't think so. I think it will do all right. I think a lot of the narrative around Marvel has to do with box office. And honestly, it all feels like a holding period for the next Avengers movie, which comes out next year. That is a real full stop. We got to bring Robert Downey Jr. back, like all hands on deck situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a movie like that, if it feels like a creative reset, if it feels like it's propelling the MCU into an exciting new direction, that could literally be a reboot of this whole vibe. But I think for Thunderbolts, everything that it does it does still, it's caught up in this holding pattern.
Yeah.
This is a movie that people who, if you already know you like Marvel movies, you're going to really like this Marvel movie.
Mm-hmm.
If you already didn't like Marvel movie, there's nothing in it that's going to change your mind that you suddenly like Marvel movies. But I do think it captures a lot of things that people have been missing in the MCU movies, which is, fun. We like team-ups. We like origin stories about team-ups. It's easier to come into and cheer for them just because, it's this new found families and stuff like that. There's things that we're missing. Like the first team-up movie is always exciting.
Yeah.
So I think, and especially after the Brave New World narrative, it'll be like a bump up. How much higher it'll go is a different question, but it'll definitely be like, oh hey, maybe it hasn't lost all its mojo.
Yeah.
Kumail Nanjiani told me something once, and this was before he got cast in a Marvel movie.
Which one was he in?
He was in Eternals.
Which one was
the fact
that?
that you don't know.
And I love him. What did he play in that one?
His character was named Kingo. I can't believe I remember that.
What did that one do?
They're basically space gods.
Yes, he was like a Bollywood star, and he was a space god.
Should I watch this movie?
I think Tracy's going to be kinder to it than I will be.
It depends on... It is...
Be honest.
Oh. It's a fun... Okay. If you feel like you need... It's for completists, right? It's for completists, but it's also like, what can Chloe Zhao do with a Marvel movie? Like, if that's something that
this
interests
is the
you...
movie that Chloe Zhao did after winning the Oscar for Best Picture.
So if you're like, what? If that's the pitch for me.
And the answer to that is still the question. What can Chloe do?
Wide shots.
But anyway,
I remember what was the Oscar one? A lot of wide shots in the Midwest.
This is all to say that when I talked to Kumail, it was like 7 or 8 years ago, and things were...
This programming is sponsored by Chariot Energy, delivering a range of electricity options for Texas businesses, large and small, offering custom plans for large businesses and web portal access for the entrepreneurs. Details at chariotenergy.com.
Most moviegoers now, whether consciously or subconsciously, we're saving those 2 or 3 slots for Marvel movies. Because 2 or 3 Marvel movies will come out per year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we still have 2 or 3 per year, but I don't know if people are saving those slots for them anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't think that Marvel will truly be back, if it ever will be, to that same degree until it feels like those 2 or 3 are saved for the Marvel movies.
All right, time now for a break. When we come back, more on Marvel and how it changed Hollywood. Stick around.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at HoustonPublicMedia.org.
you know how important trusted news is for your ability to make informed decisions. That's why News 88.7 is your station.
At Houston Public Media, we give you the facts clearly and honestly so you can make decisions about your life.
Don't let anything stand in the way of your right to stay informed. Donate today to ensure that trusted news remains free and available for everyone in our community.
Give right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Keep left.
Hi, I'm Chris Boyd, host of Think. Think is a show for curious minds. Whether we're discussing history, science, politics, or the arts, my hope is that every conversation inspires curiosity and complexity, and that every listener walks away with their own questions, inspiration, and a thirst for more knowledge. Tune in and join me as we learn something new and take a moment to think.
Weekdays at 10 p.m. on News 88.7.
Hey y'all, it's the Sam Sanders Show, your weekly guide to pop culture. Marvel released its latest blockbuster, Thunderbolts, this weekend. So this movie, I saw it, I liked it, I think it's good, but after a few recent box office stumbles, I'm still wondering, is Marvel's power fading? I'm joined by two excellent culture writers to answer this question. Tracy Brown covers entertainment for the Los Angeles Times, and Kyle Buchanan covers pop culture for the New York Times. All right, let's get back into it. I want to dig into one thing that people say was the start of Marvel's current problems. And that was a choice during the pandemic by Disney Plus and Marvel to make Marvel TV shows for folks to watch at home when they couldn't go to the movies. Folks who I trust, members of this team, say that was a moment things shifted because all of a sudden there was just too much content to keep up with. Was that a moment of shift for the MCU? COVID, Marvel TV shows?
I mean, I absolutely believe it was. I do think one of the best things that Marvel's ever done, I bet Tracy's going to agree, is WandaVision.
Say, that's some kind of getup you're wearing. Did I leave the oven on, or is that just you, hot stuff?
It feels like that was one of the last times that there was that feeling of everybody is watching this Marvel thing and wants to talk about it. But then, after WandaVision, almost every month there would be a new Marvel series.
Month?
Well, just about. I think there was a time when there would maybe be 2 weeks in between a Marvel property on Disney Plus, and that market got so wildly oversaturated so fast with things that were not up to that same creative caliber, and people started to tap out. And it is really hard once you've had this thing where it's like, I am watching every Marvel property. You start tapping out, it's like losing your Duolingo streak. You're like, you know what, the spell's broken.
My
I don't
Duolingo
necessarily have to go back to that.
My Duolingo is dead.
I don't think it was just their pivot to television.
Okay, say more.
Because it was the pandemic, there were no theaters, so there was no way to differentiate the different ways you should enjoy. Say, Black Widow was the first one where they're like, we'll just do it on digital because we can't. There's no theaters. Scarlett Johansson. That's where Florence Pugh's character was introduced.
Look, I mean, like, I think Sam is our case study here. Like, we're flipping the tables on you. Why did you start tapping out of Marvel?
I'm going to tell you why I started tapping out of Marvel, and hold your thought because I want to get back to it. It is the same reason that I chose to not buy tickets to Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour. And said, if the universe gives me a ticket, I'll go, but I'm not paying for it. Because I have a finite amount of resources. Whether it's money to go to concerts or time to watch TV and movies. And what I chose to do this year was to use my Beyonce concert money to see 5 to 10 independent artists who need the support more, and I get more concerts out of it. It's the same thing with Marvel. I love Kathryn Hahn.
Caution, please mind speed.
I like the Iron Man stuff. I like a lot of these characters, but I want to be a consumer of all the culture. And if I spend all of my time in Marvel, I can't get anything else at this point because there's too much to keep up with. So that said, Wolverine, I love you. Beyonce, I love you. But my love must be shared. My love must be shared.
But there are people like Tracy you're really enamored of most of the Marvel series, right?
Yeah, I like most of the series. I think, for me, a lot of the issues of the MCU is very parallel to superhero comic books, like Marvel comic books, where there's so much out there, to a point now where it's not new reader, new viewer friendly all the time. Like, there's access points. So comic books, for example, their solution was, we'll double down, we'll have way more. They're trying to reward the already dedicated readers, right? They're like, well, more crossovers. And then at some point they're like, oh, we need to have like new characters and reboots and stuff like that to get new people in. And the MCU hasn't figured that out yet. They're also doubling down on like, we're gonna go after the people that already like us, but that's not enough.
It makes me think of these moments watching Thunderbolts this week at a screening. There were these moments in Thunderbolts where I was like, this is going over my head. I think it's tied to some previous plot. I don't get it. But then you'd hear only men laughing uproariously because they got some inside joke that you could only know if you'd watched everything. And yeah, this is the central question. Is like, Marvel going to keep making stuff that makes those dudes the happiest, make stuff that is for everyone else, or is there a balance that they can achieve that works for everyone? Increasingly, I don't think that's possible, because also what we've seen happen, and I talk about monoculture all the time, like, the monoculture is broken, we're no longer broadcasting, we're narrowcasting, but the folks who like the narrowcasting, they're such purists and loyalists, they don't want you to screw around with their very specific content. Is Marvel trying to go broad again, going to piss off their most loyal followers?
I think you'll always have your most loyal followers. It's a mistake to over-listen to that demographic that you've got captured completely. And
because where else are they going to go?
Yeah,
DC.
Well, I do think that Marvel did have that formula that you described, Sam, down to a pretty good science for a long time. The problem now is it's so top-heavy. There's so much history, so much lore, so many characters. I mean, just recently, they did sort of a casting announcement for Avengers Doomsday, the film that's out next year, and they just basically went down a very long row of casting chairs to announce all the people.
It was like hours of video where they would just focus on a chair, and like 15 minutes later they would move to the next chair.
Here's Paul Rudd.
Yeah, but I will say this is where I will defend Marvel Television. Okay. A lot of Marvel Television is actually accessible to newer audiences.
Well, because you can watch WandaVision on its own.
Yeah, WandaVision appeals to people who love TV, not just people who...
You can watch Agatha All Along on its own.
Yeah, Agatha All Along.
What I'm saying here is you can always watch Catherine Hahn.
Yes.
You can always watch Catherine.
But like Agatha's actually a great example. You mentioned like the men laughing at Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
Agatha All Along is the other demographic, right? It's right. It's women. It's queer audience.
Queer women witches.
It's queer women witches, right? It was something that I don't, not that I think people make stuff with the audience in mind, but the audience in mind, right? This was not for your typical comic book nerd. Yeah. I saw a lot of conversation outside of the normal channels, the normal fans who really enjoyed it, and like that's what TV lets them tap into, as long as they
exit right.
Because I think. I don't want to say like Marvel TV costs us some Marvel movies, because that's not true.
It's all expensive.
Exit right. But that's where you can probably be a bit more risky. Like you can try other stuff and try to get some of the new people interested in. Now the question is like, there's nowhere for people who loved Agatha All Along to go next.
Turn left.
So that's a major thing, because
they're not doing anything else after that, right?
No, I agree with you, Tracy, and I also don't think that they would make that show anymore.
Why not?
I think that making that show was at a certain time where they were coming off of a big hit show with WandaVision, and they were flooding the zone, and it was like, let's make a smaller or a lower cost version of this with a breakout character for like the girls, gays, and theys. And I don't think that that's their mandate anymore. I think they're making fewer shows, and they want them to all be like 4-quadrant hits.
Yeah. Would Marvel ever make a movie on the big screen for the girls, gays, and theys?
They sort of tried. The Marvels. That's definitely
Which one was that?
The Marvels. The Marvels is it was Brie Larson, Keona Paris, and Iman Vellani.
Black woman director,
yeah,
right?
Black woman. Yeah, Nida Costa's movie.
It was also gay?
Well, not really.
They
didn't tell me that.
No, there's like a tease. There's like a tease that's not. It's not any more gay than most MCU stuff. There's no. Yeah, no. It's definitely. There's a nod for people who were like deep in the fandom of some of like non-canon pairings. There's like little winks for you.
All right.
But it was 3 women leading this movie that flopped hard.
I remember it flopping
and
hard.
I do think that that, you know, in the Disney corporate offices, especially in the climate that we're in now,
they're not trying to be too progressive these days.
There is a rush to be the opposite of that. And I think that you've certainly had Marvel movies that show that, like, you know, feeling representation on the superheroic scale can be lucrative, like Black Panther and the original Captain Marvel prove that amply, I feel. But I do think that there is a conservative retrenching in almost every arena of entertainment, certainly when movies cost this much and their executives have to kowtow to a president that would deem most of these movies to be DEI efforts. I think we're going to see a chill when it comes to properties.
But I have to say, like, The Marvels was a perfectly fine, good movie.
Actually, you wrote us before this and said that was one of your hottest pop culture hot takes.
Yeah, it was one of my favorite movies since Endgame. They had just enough Easter eggs for people that were, watching TV payoffs. But it was a movie that knew to have fun, and it centered women and women of color and like young women.
Okay.
There's a dance number. There's like cats doing crazy things. There's a fight sequence where like set to like Missy Elliott. Like it's all great.
Why did no one tell me about this?
Because no one talked about it. Nobody saw it because they came out during the strikes. Like they couldn't advertise it. It was a bad time. I don't think any movie would have done well in the circumstances that this was released in.
Disney did not believe in this movie, so they were happy to release it during the strikes. They barely wanted to release it at all.
Huh. But I'm gonna watch it now. You convinced me.
It's a perfectly fine, fun. It's like an ice cream movie. You go, you know you're gonna like it.
No, I'm for it.
There may not be calories that are like healthy for you, but it's still like you come out and you're like, that was fun.
Okay. I love it. Well, and maybe that's the kind of Marvel I want to see right now. One that can poke fun at itself. Because I think that one of Marvel's biggest problems was taking itself so seriously that every movie was a high stakes event. They never gave themselves an opportunity to have something that wasn't wildly successful. They made every movie too big to fail. Would Marvel have a different report card if some of their film releases weren't all just big blockbusters, but like some weird ones, some art house ones, some indie ones, some that were released at different times of the year? Like everything they've made has been so high stakes for them, it's just hard to keep that up. I think of my favorite Marvel-ish movie, and it's not quite MCU, but it's that Wolverine kind of spinoff, Logan. That's a Western, not in the typical Marvel fashion, and it wasn't expected to perform as wildly as a typical Marvel film. And everyone loved that movie, and it did pretty well. And I think Marvel put itself in a box because for 20 years now, they've said, we must have a big blockbuster every year. That's just hard. Is there a future where Marvel just makes different types of films that fit into the film ecosystem in different ways?
If they're willing to trust directors. Logan was Logan was an auteur project made by James Mangold, and because it wasn't a big deal and because the X-Men franchise at that point was not held by the MCU, overseen by Kevin Feige, who runs Marvel Studios, Fox just kind of let James Mangold and Hugh Jackman do what they wanted.
And it's so good. It's not just a great action hero movie, it's also a commentary on America's immigration system. This movie is so good.
The auteur right now in the MCU, has and always will be, is Kevin Feige. And occasionally you do have a great director who works in that and can make that stuff work. But I would argue even a Ryan Coogler, when you watch Sinners, you're like, this is the full-blown Ryan Coogler experience, not Black Panther Wakanda Forever. He brings elements of it, but like Sinners is a full meal, front to back, and like absolutely everything about it is complete. And it's so satisfying to watch an incredible visionary filmmaker like Ryan Coogler make a complete feeling movie that pleases a crowd like this.
And that is a new idea, and that is not existing IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and I do think that's the issue with Marvel, is that they've become, I don't like saying too big to fail.
They are too big to fail.
But they're too big to fail, so they can't trust their filmmakers. They'll get the Ryan Coogler. They got Chloe Zhao. Like, go let her be Chloe Zhao.
Yeah.
Why don't you let her do it, right? Even Ida Costa, her other stuff is... She has a point of view. Like, the filmmaker's point of view, you can tell it is muted because it needs to serve the...
Go straight
I don't
on.
want to say assembly line, but more,
it's fair to say.
filmmaking, right? Filmmaking by committee. Like, people, it's so big that they can't take the risk of letting a filmmaker be weird, but the weird stuff is what we want.
Keep right,
That part.
and then continue straight on.
Dear listener, if you have a Marvel hot take, and I bet you do,
Go
sign
straight
up for my
on.
newsletter. You can share it with me there, because I'm going to send you my Marvel hot takes to your inbox if you sign up for the newsletter. Go to kcrw.com/Sam Sanders to get it. All right, time now for a break. When we come back, what's the next Marvel? Stay with us.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe. R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
We believe in your right to free information. Help protect trusted news that keeps us all informed by supporting Houston Public Media. Stand up for your right to information. Give today at houstonpublicmedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Public Media exists for those in our community in Southeast Texas. We appreciate our visionary supporters for enabling us to be the essential source for independent journalism and programs that inform, inspire, and engage all Houstonians. Jenny and Mike Conway, Judith and Mark Cook, Carolyn and Platt Davis, Janice and George Fleming, Amanda and Morris Gelb, Maria and Rex Gray, and Cynthia Holliday. Thank you.
On the next Call to Mind special, America's aging population is expected to double by 2050. We'll hear from older adults living with mental illnesses and from the people caring for them.
I've been told I don't look like I have a mental illness. And I'm like, oh, what does mental illness look like?
I'm Kimberly Adams. Join me for The Aging Mind from American Public Media.
Sunday night at 10 on News 88.7.
Hey, y'all, it's the Sam Sanders Show with your weekly guide to pop culture. So, Marvel released its latest action blockbuster this weekend. It's called Thunderbolts. I saw it, and I thought it was pretty good. But I couldn't help but compare it to another movie I saw recently, Sinners, which I liked even more. Sinners is a story all about the history of black music in America, and also vampires, and also racial politics, all set in the Deep South.
Listen here, this ain't no house party. Y'all ready to drink? Y'all ready to sweat till y'all stank?
Keep left, and then turn left.
You keep dancing with the devil. One day he's gonna follow you home.
So this story, it is completely
left.
original. It comes from director Ryan Coogler, who previously directed the Black Panther films for Marvel. This movie, it was a major critical and commercial hit. So I've been asking myself, is this the future of Hollywood? Are we done with comic book superhero IP and ready for something new? I also posed that question to my guest this week, Kyle Buchanan of the New York Times and Tracy Brown of the Los Angeles Times. All right, let's get back into it.
Turn right.
I'm so glad y'all brought up Coogler and Sinners, because I think also an existential question for the future of Marvel is an existential question for Hollywood about IP. The Marvel era really cemented the
Caution,
era of
please mind the speed.
quote-unquote existing IP in Hollywood. What is a plot line or character or story that exists already and has fans, and how can we put that on a screen and get folks to watch it? And Hollywood has become IP-ified in large part due to Marvel and its success. And we even see the long tail of that Marvel IP shadow in movies like Barbie.
Go straight on.
Which are just a different kind of IP that works, right? And so much of what Sinners represents
left,
is a rejection
and
of
then
that.
turn left.
It is a brand new story that no one's seen before. This
left.
movie has done so well. It only dropped its box office haul by like 6% from weekend 1 to weekend 2. Is the real test for the future of Marvel a question of whether viewers are fatigued by existing IP and want new stuff like Sinners? Is that the real question for Marvel?
I mean, I would love if I felt that Sinners was a threat to anything. I mean, I would love if Hollywood...
You don't think it's a threat?
I would love if Hollywood would learn the right lessons from a big success, and they never do.
What is the right lesson from Sinners?
Do I feel... let's...
People want vampires again.
Let's take it back 2 years.
That's what they're going to take away.
Let's take it back 2 years. Do you feel that the Hollywood landscape is different because of the mega success of Barbie?
No.
I can't give you a single example.
Caution, please
the lesson
mind
from
the
Barbie should have been let women make more movies that center women, but the lesson Hollywood executives took was more toy movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, and it's a similar thing that you can also kind of see with Sinners, which is let an auteur make a movie like that, and it's going to be fascinating.
And let a movie be as black as it wants to be.
Yeah. So I don't know. I never underestimate Hollywood's ability to learn the wrong
Get
lesson.
ready to turn
and
right.
I think that, yes, I would love to think that they're learning something from Sinners. I think what they're learning from
Turn
is
right,
Minecraft.
and then turn
And if there's any threat to Marvel's dominance, it is the fact that like the gold
Toy
rush,
IP.
No, the gold rush of creating IP
Turn right.
from video games becomes the dominant thing instead of comic books.
So we're not moving to new IP. We're just changing our existing IP paradigm from comic book IP to video game IP.
Because it feels like, no pun intended, a lot of the big comic book IP is mined. But a lot of the big video game IP isn't. We have a Legend of Zelda movie in development. It's almost crazy that we've never had one before.
And when you think about it, video games are a bigger industry than comic books.
And in the movies,
right?
At this
And
point.
the movies, right? So why wouldn't you go, The Last of Us, it was like a big video game.
Yes.
There's a built-in fan base.
Comic
Many
books
more,
don't make billions.
Yeah. Many more people played The Last of Us than read the most recent arc of the X-Men.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
But Mario, Zelda, Minecraft, if they could ever entice
The Lego movies.
Yeah, the Lego movies,
Which I liked.
But we haven't seen a Grand Theft Auto movie. There's so much that can be mined. Hey, if Zelda is a big hit and then you make like a Metroid movie, you could do Super Smash Brothers and then you've got your own little Avengers situation.
Crossovers.
There's so much more to be mined from video games. So I do think Marvel is here to stay. Comic book movies are here to stay. But if
IP
there's
is
any
still
threat,
just-
it's a more dominant IP emerging.
I was hoping y'all would tell me that the success of Sinners means that
Ready to
Hollywood
roll.
is finally ready to toss off the shackles of stifling existing IP and move into a world in which new ideas are rewarded and cinema becomes high art again.
I want to point to Barbie. Like, Barbie is...
Time to hit the road.
I don't want to say it, but is the best we can expect right now, where you find an IP, but find a way to get your auteur vision through it still.
Yeah.
Because no one is greenlighting things that aren't IP.
Yeah.
Unless you're
Ryan Coogler.
Ryan Coogler. But he has enough, right? Like, how many Ryan Cooglers are out there? How many?
Yeah.
No one gets to have that track record anymore, and that's kind of the problem.
There's just a handful of people like that right now. And those are the people who can get incredible, original, sometimes well-budgeted films made, but it's a handful.
Yeah.
And they're not going to take those chances on
ready to
other
turn
young
left.
filmmakers just because of Sinners.
Yeah.
Those people are
Turn
going
left.
to have to emerge in other ways.
Well, and also Coogler paid his due in IP. He did the Creed movies and Black Panther.
Yeah.
So he was in that world too. I feel like, how have we made it 47 minutes into a Marvel conversation without mentioning DC? Do we have to talk
Turn
about
left.
DC and all of this and what that means for the future of Marvel?
Well, DC, I mean, they're going through their own reboot, reinvention right now.
Yeah. With the former Marvel director, right?
Yes, James Gunn, who directed the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, is now overseeing the DC project in a sort of similar way as Kevin Feige at Marvel, and wrote and directed Superman, which is coming out this summer. I'm very curious
Who's the
about it.
Superman?
It's this guy, David Corenswet. He looks like Superman.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Rachel Brosnahan from Miss
Love
Maisel
her.
is Lois Lane.
All right.
So I'm definitely curious about it. I think what they're hoping to do is something obviously very much akin to the MCU, which DC has tried before
Keep
with
left,
Zack Snyder
and then
these
turn
somewhat
left.
darker takes on those characters. I think what James Gunn wants is something
Turn
that's
left.
a little bit more upbeat and offbeat. Whether people are eager to have these sort of two parallel tracks of comic book universes that they have to keep track of is not necessarily. I'm not convinced. But
Caution,
one thing that
please
James Gunn
mind
has
speed
said,
limit.
which I think is very interesting, is that though these projects will all be interconnected, he's not going to rush a movie into production until the screenplay is ready. So he's not
sure.
Well, I don't know. Let's find out because, he's worked in the Marvel mill. He knows that when there's a release date that's made and the expectation that this movie has to come out because it's setting up this next movie, then sometimes things get pushed into place when they're not ready. And so he wants these movies to all be interconnected, but there isn't that sense of we have to go, at least according to him, until the script is airtight. And you don't often find that in big budget filmmaking.
Yeah. And to James Gunn's credit, he's one of the few filmmakers where you watch a Guardians or a Suicide Squad, and you're like, it still feels like a James Gunn movie. And maybe DC will be a place because he has that experience where filmmakers can go and make a movie that still feels like one of their movies. It's
Go
hard to say,
straight
'cause
on.
It's fresh in the beginning right now.
Yeah.
But they do what DC has that maybe the MCU doesn't is I feel like a lot of the DC characters are bigger, right? Like a lot more people know
Which
Superman.
characters?
Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Those are the big they have
They're big.
they have the biggest.
They're no Wolverine. But
Yeah,
they're big.
they have the biggest, and they're big solo. Like they're they don't have to team up. I don't know. So it'll be curious to see if Marvel and DC can be good at the same time.
Yeah, I think Tracy hit on something here, which is like James Gunn knows how to make a movie in that format that feels extremely specific and auteur-driven and is totally governed by his sentimental and irreverent sensibilities, like all kind of like coming into play and making a $200 million movie that actually feels like tailored to what he wants to say. And I think that a lot of the filmmakers who come in and make Marvel movies have never
Keep
made a
right,
movie of this scale before,
and then turn
don't
right.
necessarily speak this in the language of this property, and are frequently
Turn
told,
right.
don't worry about the action, we have people who will do that for you. Just worry about like character, the acting beats, and whatever. And I think James Gunn is extremely thorough. It all comes from his head, and the best
Keep left,
Marvel
and
filmmakers
then
and the best
turn
filmmakers
left.
who operate in this genre know how to make the whole thing feel like them
Turn
and
left.
don't just kind of come in as a gun for hire.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah. If you're just now joining me, we are delving into all things Marvel and superheroes. I'm talking with New York Times pop culture reporter Kyle Buchanan and Tracy Brown, entertainment
straight
reporter
on.
for the Los Angeles Times. To close the Marvel loop in this conversation, I want you
Keep
both
right.
to put on your historian hats. Flash forward 30 or 40 years. You're both teaching history of film at whatever university you choose. For your segment or chapter or class
straight on.
the legacy of Marvel in Hollywood, what is this thesis statement for that course?
The Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Keep
despite
left,
having
and
cinema
then
in
turn
its
left.
name, was the start of the TVification of movies.
Explain
Turn
that in
left.
2 more sentences.
Films, right? The Marvel films, like Marvel comic books, it's serialized storytelling. They're not, very few of them are standalones. Most of the Marvel standalone movies are just because they didn't do that well. They're like, we won't do a follow-up.
Go straight on,
They
and then
made
keep right.
movie going, appointment movie going, because it was interconnected.
Keep right.
And that was the strength. Like, in the beginning, that's the strength. You're like, there's payoff. You know, I want to know the next part of the story. I like knowing the jokes. But you keep building that, and it makes it less special. When it starts feeling like television, why wouldn't you just watch it on television?
Oof. I would take that class. I like that. Same question to you.
No, I'm copying a little bit of that syllabus because I think you also hit on something, which is, yes, like the Marvel movies were making incredible money. They were keeping theaters alive, et cetera, But at the same time, as TV was becoming a much more dominant medium than movies, like as that paradigm shifted, Marvel was giving you something serialized that felt like TV, where it felt like appointment viewing. You had to watch it that week, otherwise you'd be spoiled on like where things were going. So it would be something like that, or maybe the thesis would be that Jean Grey is the best X-Men character because she's the most powerful and all the hot boys like her.
So you want a course just on Jean Grey?
Let's do it.
If we're looking to the future, maybe my thesis will be how the X-Men saved the MCU. We don't know. It might.
Okay. All right. Sign me up for both courses. Can we pivot? I want to try a new segment out on the show this week. We're going to call it One More Thing. You think we're done talking, but no, because there's one more thing. And because I have two journalists who cover entertainment and the industry and movies and all that good stuff, I have to ask you about a thing that has set Hollywood abuzz this week. The Academy of Arts and Sciences has announced that for the first time ever, the people who vote on the Oscars will actually have to watch all the movies. I thought they already had to? What's going on here? Please tell me.
Yeah, so they've made it so that you basically have to, prove that you've watched the nominated movies.
But why weren't they always doing this?
Well, first of all, it wouldn't have been possible to really confirm that before, because now so many Oscar voters watch things on the Academy screening app, which, they just fire up their Apple TV or whatever, and they're watching movies there. So they can actually, there's a way to check what movies are actually being viewed. I think what this really is about, because I don't know to the extent to which they're going to actually apply oversight to this, is those brutally honest Oscar ballots that you get around Oscar season. You see them in the Hollywood Reporter and other trades, where anonymous Oscar voters are talking about the movies they hated, or
I'm not voting for her.
They
She
only
doesn't
watched the
deserve it.
first half of The Brutalist, or that actress was mean to me once at a party. I would never vote for her. Things like that, and they're always shocking, spicy opinions. But they also
They're no longer shocking.
They aren't anymore, because we kind of have come to expect that it's almost the default Oscar voter. So I think to dispel that idea and to maybe get some of those stragglers in line, they want to create the appearance of you won't be doing any of this unless you are really dedicating yourself to watching all of these movies.
Yeah.
For me, I cover a lot of animation.
Yeah.
So for me, this was a problem you could see in something like the animation category, because it turned into a category where you knew, the Oscar voters were only going to vote for the Disney or Pixar because those are the only two they saw with their kids or their grandkids.
And then
those brutally honest, right? Oscar movies come out, they're I don't care about animation. I watched this because my daughter made me go see it with her, so I voted for that one. So I think part of it is making sure people who are voting and if you can't have it out there that's what's happening, right?
Yeah.
And it keeps it from being the same two films winning everything, because I think that's been a problem in the past few Oscars is one movie wins everything. And sometimes you're is it just because that's the only movie the voters saw, and I'm just gonna keep voting it down the ballot.
I also contend that a lot of Oscar voters vote for movies they've never seen and are totally fine.
Oh, I've met them. Yes, absolutely. This is true. Yes, this happens all the time.
So then, is this rule going to make someone like me happier with the Oscar winners or more upset? Because I consistently think that the Oscars get it wrong. Crash beating Brokeback Mountain, The King's Speech beating The Social Network. I could go on. Is this change going to help the Oscars, quote unquote, get it right more, or will they be even more disconnected from consensus of great films?
It's my hope, because they have taken great pains to diversify the Academy, period. Tracy was bringing up the animated categories. I was very heartened that this last year that the animated Oscar went to Flow, which I think is an incredible movie and was not Disney or Pixar, was, made in Latvia. But I always thought if everyone in the Academy saw all the animated films, they'd vote for Flow, and it did win. And I think that speaks a little bit to the increasingly international Academy membership, but then also, maybe the people who were motivated to watch these movies actually did go for it. I think that this year in particular, we saw a little bit of the LA influence of the Academy somewhat diminished, because with the wildfires, people had other things going on. They maybe didn't get to everything. And a lot of the international voters picked up the slack, and they made pretty good choices. So my hope is that in the future, yes, that it will incentivize people to just be smarter and not vote so automatically.
Okay.
I'm a little cynical. I'm like, but how do we prove they really watched all of it?
But I don't think you'll be able to. But
Right? Like you start it, you go to another room.
There's a carve-out also.
People do that. But
yeah, there's also a carve-out I was reading about where you can just say that you saw it at an official screening, not on the app.
To me,
so you can just lie still.
Sure. And again, like, we don't know how strictly they're going to police this. But what I would liken it to is, like, maybe, you know, the whole class is working on a text and the teacher, like, leaves the room. And the teacher has now come back into the room. So you are a little more focused on that test. There's less cheating. There's just this feeling of like, okay, like, let's get back down to business. And people were a little too, you know, goofing off in class.
So it might not make everyone voting watch every movie, but it will up the rate of movie watching.
And the rate of movie completion, or at least diminish the rate of telling the Hollywood Reporter that you didn't watch all these things.
Yeah. Funny how they didn't introduce this rule until after the year of the Root List. Thanks again to my guests Tracy Brown, entertainment reporter for the Los Angeles Times, and Kyle Buchanan, pop culture writer for the New York Times. This show is a co-production between Sam Sanders Productions and KCRW. We are distributed nationally by PRX. Our showrunner is Tyler Green, and our senior producer is Bennett Purser. Phil Richards is our technical director. Together, Arnie Seifel and I co-executive produce this show. And a special thanks this week to Miriam Fernanda Alcala Delgado. You're great, Miriam Fernanda. Thanks for all you do. All right, if you like what you've heard today, you can find all of my interviews on your favorite podcast app, on YouTube, and at kcrw.com/Sam Sanders. All right, superheroes. See y'all next week.
PRX. This is Ernie Manus, and I'd like to thank everyone for checking out our new talk show, Hello Houston.
I'm Frank Billingsley. Not only can you listen to us on the News 88.7 airwaves, but you can watch us on the Houston Public Media YouTube page.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We had great conversations this past week, Houston, and we want you to join us weekdays to talk about the topics that affect Houston and beyond.
And you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
It's Hello Houston, where Houston talks, here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Gen Pro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
Your NPR station, News 88.7 KUHF Houston, a service of the University of Houston. Get local and breaking news anytime at houstonpublicmedia.org. Listen to us on your favorite devices. Tell your smart speaker to play News 88.7.
From Futuro Media and PRX, it's Latino USA. I'm Fernanda Chavarri, in for our host, Maria Hinojosa. Today, the ongoing fight to defend the legal status of Venezuelan immigrants in the United States.
We are the most vulnerable diaspora in the United States.
And later, we remember the life and legacy of Papa Francisco, Pope Francis.
Another example of this kind of solidarity that he had, up until the last day he was alive, he called a church in Gaza every night.
All this coming up on Latino USA. Stay with us, no te vayas.
Keep left.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. President Trump says he doesn't know if every person in the U.S. is entitled to due process under the Constitution, as his administration focuses on deporting people in the U.S. illegally. In a broad-ranging interview on NBC's Meet the Press, Trump also says he's not worried about a recession. This amid his trade wars with several countries. NPR's Asma Khalid has more.
Trump put in place these sweeping tariffs on many countries throughout the globe, and then he pulled back on them, but he still has left a 10% tariff on many imports from around the globe with the goal of negotiating trade deals. Last week, different economic advisors came out and alluded to the fact that they were very close to a deal, but we still haven't seen a deal, and I will say that trade deals take a really long time to figure out in terms of the nitty-gritty details.
NPR's Asma Khalid reporting. Some military veterans say they're seeing more delays in health care from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Chuck Warmbach of member station WUWM has more from a roundtable held by Wisconsin Democratic Senator Tammy Baldwin this weekend.
Ryan McCants is an Army veteran who sustained what he calls pretty gnarly injuries during deployment in Afghanistan. He often relies on VA health care for both physical problems and mental health concerns. McCants says access to care has become more difficult over the last few months.
Specifically, I just called 3 days ago to try and schedule an appointment with my therapist. I can't get in until August, mid-August, to see my therapist.
VA Secretary Doug Collins is scheduled to testify this week before a Senate committee. He's promised a proposed cut of up to 15% of the agency's workforce would not harm the quality of veterans' health care. For NPR News, I'm Chuck Warmbach in Milwaukee.
Israel is vowing retribution after a missile fired by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in Yemen landed near Israel's main airport today. NPR's Carrie Kahn has more.
Sirens went off in many cities in central Israel, including Tel Aviv, early Sunday morning, sending Israelis into bomb shelters and halting flights at the international airport. The missile or debris from it fell in a field near Ben Gurion Airport. Most missiles from Yemen are intercepted, but some have penetrated Israeli airspace and caused damage. A Yemeni official posted on social media that the attack is a warning to international airlines to not fly into Israel's main airport. Since the start of the Gaza war in solidarity with Palestinians, the Houthis have sent missiles into Israel. Israel's defense minister says forces will no longer use restraint against Yemen, adding, quote, "Whoever harms us, we will harm them sevenfold." Carrie Kahn, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
You're listening to NPR News. In Brazil, authorities say they foiled a planned bombing at a free outdoor Lady Gaga concert and that 2 people are in custody. Police say the suspects were recruiting participants to carry out attacks using improvised explosive devices targeting LGBTQ people. Brazil's Ministry of Justice and Public Security says the plot was allegedly organized by a larger extremist network that operates online to radicalize young people and provoke hate crimes. Gaga played to some 2 million people, the biggest attendance for a female artist, beating Madonna's draw of 1.6 million people at her free concert in Brazil last year. Thunderbolts, Marvel's latest team-building exercise, is off to a decent start at box office around the world. NPR's Bob Mondello has more.
For a film about decidedly minor Marvel characters, Thunderbolts did just fine.
You feel fulfilled? Yeah, so full. So filled.
By the end of the weekend, it will have taken in about $76 million in North America and another $86 million overseas, for a total of $162 million in 3 days. That's hardly huge for a Marvel movie, but Thunderbolts wasn't hugely expensive to produce. It's expected to play well for much of the summer. Also performing well, the third weekend of the blues-inflected vampire film Sinners.
We gonna kill every last one of you.
In 3 weeks, Sinners has now collected almost $180 million just in North America. Bob Mondello, NPR News.
And I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News in Washington.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Wallace Foundation, an independent, nonpartisan research foundation collaborating with grantees and partners in the arts, school leadership, and youth development. More at wallacefoundation.org. This is NPR.
Did you know 80% of our funding comes from listeners like you? right here in Houston. That's why your support is so
Caution,
important.
please mind
When
the
you give to
speed.
Houston Public Media, you're investing in trusted news and educational programming that millions depend on daily. Every dollar you give makes a difference, ensuring this public service stays strong for everyone in our
please mind
community.
the speed
Help us support this mission. Give today at HoustonPublicMedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
Welcome to Latino USA. I'm Fernanda Chavarri, in for our host, Maria Hinojosa. It's been almost 10 years since José Sosa fled Venezuela for political reasons.
Y si me dices cómo me siento actualmente, básicamente me siento de la misma manera en la que salí.
Today, he feels like he's back to square one, living under the rule of another repressive government. This time, in the United States.
Sentirse únicamente perseguido por ser venezolano,
Keep
no
right
creo que sea justo para nadie.
and then exit
Feeling
right.
targeted just for being Venezuelan is not fair, he says.
Exit right.
Buenas noches, Venezuela.
It's a Saturday afternoon in April,
Keep
and
left.
Jose is outside of El Arepaso, a Venezuelan restaurant and mainstay in Doral, a small city in Miami-Dade County. These days, the city of Doral goes by the nickname Dorazuela because of the large number of Venezuelans who live there.
Ya paró, desde allá, ¿no? Vine de allá, sí, desde allá exactamente. Debe ser así, ¿ah?
Jose and his wife Belén are tepecianos, which means that they have TPS, or Temporary Protected Status. TPS allows people from specific countries to stay in the U.S. temporarily if they cannot return safely, either because of economic turmoil, environmental disasters, or other extraordinary circumstances. TPS is currently available to citizens of 17 countries, including Venezuela. It provides temporary work authorization, which also means that those with TPS are paying into Social Security.
Por favor, si quieren encender sus velitas, lo pueden hacer en este momento.
Today at the restaurant, dozens of people are lighting velitas, candles, seeking solidarity and bipartisan support for the future of Venezuelans in the U.S. More than 600,000 Venezuelans have TPS. That's roughly 7 in every 10 Venezuelans who are living in the U.S. But things have gotten particularly complicated for them in the last few months.
The Venezuelan gangs are the worst in the world. They're vicious, violent people. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. We're moving with urgency and speed to get these vicious and violent criminals the hell out of our country.
In late January, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced that she was canceling the 18-month TPS extension, the one that the Biden administration had granted TPS holders who received protection in 2023.
They were going to be able to stay here and violate our laws for another 18 months, and we stopped that.
The Trump administration claims that Venezuela no longer meets conditions for TPS, but immigration experts and tepecianos disagree.
Political violence and economy in tatters, plus a disputed presidential election, have the people of Venezuela fearful and desperate. Millions have already fled to other nations, including the United States.
Last year, the humanitarian information platform Hum Venezuela found that almost 20 million people, about 70% of the population of Venezuela, lives in poverty. Nicolás Maduro, the autocratic leader of Venezuela, maintains his tight grip. And earlier this year, the United Nations Human Rights Council found that harsh repression and crimes against humanity are ongoing in the country. So Venezuelans are scared to go back.
It's in danger of losing their lives, or it's in danger of coming back to their country. In my case, I left because my life and my entire family was in danger.
All Latin America is by your side. We're all together in this, yes. And we want to make sure.
But the targeting of Venezuelans in the U.S. has Jose questioning this country's core values: freedom and justice for all.
Pero hay mucha retaliación política y básicamente veo que somos como un instrumento de mala negociación.
Jose says he feels like he's being used as a political pawn in an ill-gotten negotiation. But he's glad to see that there are people advocating for him and for his community.
Cecilia González, que es una de nuestras codemandantes.
Cecilia González is one of the most visible faces in the fight for Venezuelans to remain in the U.S. She's one of the plaintiffs in a high-stakes federal case to preserve TPS.
Latino USA producer Tasha Sandoval is going to pick up the story from here.
Cecilia Gonzalez grew up in Barinas, Venezuela.
So Barinas is a small town kind of close to the Colombian border where Chavez was born.
That's Hugo Chavez, the late socialist leader who ruled Venezuela for more than a decade.
So everybody kind of knew each other.
And Cecilia's parents were vocal about their dissenting political beliefs, calling out corruption when they saw it.
Which led to threats, which led to, like, my mom was victim of what we call an express kidnap. They kind of like kidnap you for short hours, like giving you a message.
So, when Cecilia was 18, her parents decided it was time to go.
And it's kind of like what led us to move here, file for an asylum, and just been waiting for that asylum to be reviewed.
They've been waiting since 2017. Before becoming a student and an advocate, Cecilia had a hard time adjusting to her new life in the U.S.
The depression that I faced when I just moved to the U.S. was just a result of me feeling I didn't belong.
In Venezuela, Cecilia was a journalism student and an activist. In Central Florida, she struggled to find purpose.
I kind of like did what I was supposed to. I got a job, worked at the theme parks for almost 3 years.
But then she got involved with a local advocacy organization, Casa Venezuela.
And eventually kind of allowed me to answer, oh, who am I? Oh, okay, I'm a public servant, and an advocate, and a volunteer, and an immigrant, and a daughter.
She found her footing, and soon she got into politics. She helped form Venezolanos por Biden and became a Latina spokesperson for his 2020 campaign.
In the first 100 days, he got the TPS for Venezuelans in 2021.
That year, Cecilia and her family applied for TPS. They qualified and were granted protection. Since then, Cecilia has been working as a voting rights advocacy coordinator and going to school at the same time. She's about to graduate with a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Central Florida. Earlier this year, she was Florida Congressman Darren Soto's guest at the presidential address to Congress.
Cecilia Gonzalez, a local Venezuelan immigrant activist who's been doing amazing work in the district.
With no answer on her family's asylum request after 8 years, Cecilia feels a greater sense of stability under TPS.
The reality is that pending asylum is no a status, and that's being reflected in so many spaces, including a school. When you apply to go to college here, they ask you for your status.
TPS doesn't give access to federal financial aid for college, but it can open the door to private grants and scholarships at some universities.
TPS was kind of like an extra protection, understanding that it was always intended to be temporary, that it did not provide a permanent solution, but it's an extra layer of protection in case of in the worst scenario.
By worst of scenarios, Cecilia means losing TPS and not being granted asylum either. In short, becoming deportable. That's why preserving TPS is so important for her. And Cecilia says the fight is unfolding in more than one place.
There always have been two battles. There's going to be a legal battle inside the courts, and there's going to be the battle at the streets, like what we call la pelea en la calle.
Part of her role as an activist tepeciana is about changing minds, getting the word out that Venezuelans are not all criminals or gang members. According to data from the U.S. Treasury Department, 800 people have been arrested for links to the Tren de Aragua gang. That's only 0.08% of the Venezuelan population living in the United States.
The Trump administration, they're creating this narrative that immigrants are criminals. All these 600,000 Venezuelans with TPS, they're all Tren de Aragua members. It's sad, but we need to continue proving this country and ourselves that we indeed are worthy to remain, that we are hardworking people, honest, decent people, that only that we want to be able to live here with dignity.
Under Secretary Noem's February order, Cecilia's best friend was getting ready to say goodbye to his mother, a TPS holder. On a recent visit, Cecilia found her packing.
I went up to her room and I see her like with all these clothes, and she's handing me these two shoes and she says, "What size are you?"
She was getting ready to leave for Colombia rather than face possible deportation. Going back to Venezuela wasn't an option. So neighboring Colombia, where about 3 million Venezuelans already live, made sense.
And I remember being like, stop it, we're not doing this. Like, we are fighting, we're choosing to fight.
Coming up on Latino USA, Cecilia sues the federal government in a case affecting the future of hundreds of thousands of people. Stay with us, no te vayas.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from IL Texas, helping to prepare students for leadership roles in the international community by emphasizing servant leadership, language immersion, and character building. More at iltexas.org.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
I'm News 88.7 afternoon anchor Gail DeLauder. I would say Houston Public Media is the most reliable information source in Houston because we have people who know what our vision is, and they bring that vision out into the field when they work on their stories. It's not only talking about what's going on, but why things are going on. So what we strive to do here at Houston Public Media is to not just present the breaking news, the things you need to know right now, but what's going on behind the news and the information that you need to make informed decisions as we go forward.
Welcome back to Latino USA. I'm Fernanda Chavarri, in for our host, Maria Hinojosa. Before the break, we met Cecilia Gonzalez, a Venezuelan activist and Tepeciana, or TPS holder. Cecilia is one of the most visible faces in the fight to preserve this temporary protection for Venezuelans. So let's get back to the rest of the story. Here's producer Tasha Sandoval.
When we first spoke in mid-March, Cecilia was getting ready to go to California for the first hearing in a federal lawsuit. The National TPS Alliance, a national member-led organization, and 7 plaintiffs, including Cecilia, were suing the federal government. Participating in the case was a no-brainer for her.
Both my parents dedicated their careers and their adult life to speak truth to power, and then sacrificing all their career, reputation, everything that they have built for us to live in this country comfortably and freely. It's just a way for me to honor their sacrifices.
Cecilia and her co-plaintiffs accuse the government of illegally revoking the TPS extension granted by the Biden administration, in violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. They also allege that the government's actions were discriminatory and in violation of the Fifth Amendment's Equal Protection Guarantee. For the government, allowing Venezuelan nationals to remain in the U.S. is contrary to the, quote, national interest. And then, on March 31st, U.S. District Court Judge Edward M. Chen released his ruling.
We have breaking news just coming in right now. A federal judge has stopped the Trump administration's plan to end protections for up to 350,000 Venezuelans.
I felt relieved, but also super proud.
The order postpones DHS's actions, allowing all Venezuelan TPS holders to retain their status as long as there's a pending legal case, or until October 2026, when their protection is set to expire.
We won a tiny victory, or like this is a tiny victory. I'm on a very long battle.
And it's a temporary win. The Trump administration filed for a stay, or a pause, on Judge Chen's emergency ruling, while their appeal process is ongoing. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals denied that request in April. They plan to hear the case in July. Cecilia hopes that Judge Chen's temporary ruling will be the beginning of a historic win for Venezuelans in the U.S.
I was talking with some of my other Venezuelan leaders, and we say, we are writing a new chapter in the immigration story in the U.S.
One of Cecilia's fellow leaders is Adelis Ferro, executive director of the Venezuelan American Caucus, powered by Latino Victory, a progressive organization that aims to grow Latino political power. She was a declarant in the case and has become a very public advocate for Venezuelans. She also helped host the vigil for Venezuelans in Doral, the event we started the show with. We caught up there after the ruling. I asked Adelis why she thinks the Trump administration is specifically targeting Venezuelans.
We are the most vulnerable diaspora in the United States. We don't have
Let's find a new
representation,
route.
and we are the new diaspora, the new immigrant exodus that has entered in big numbers in the United States.
Though most Venezuelan migrants and refugees have gone to countries other than the U.S., close to 700,000 have arrived in the U.S. since 2010. Adelis believes the Trump administration has made it a goal to deport as many people as they can.
They need people to get deported. They need to fill that quota, and we are the best target, the easiest one.
And ending TPS is just one way the Trump administration is trying to eliminate protections from deportation. On March 25th, DHS officially announced the termination of a humanitarian parole program, benefiting not just more than 120,000 additional Venezuelans, but also close to 500,000 Haitians, Cubans, and Nicaraguans.
The legal status of over 500,000 people living in the United States was just reversed by the Trump administration.
But on April 15th, a federal judge in Boston blocked the government's action.
Hola, hola, buenas noches. Les tenemos noticias acerca del paro humanitario. Ganamos. Otra vez ganamos una.
Adelis let her community know on an Instagram Live. We won, she announced. The ruling means that so far, both TPS and humanitarian parole are temporarily protected. Still, the Trump administration has been insistent, drawing a link between people with legal status, like TPS holders, and the Tren de Aragua gang. In February, Trump designated Tren de Aragua a foreign terrorist organization.
The people of this country want these dirtbags out. They want their communities to be safe.
Adelis remembers the moment in the courtroom when the judge addressed these comments by Secretary Noem.
And whenever the judge asked the lawyers from the government, they said that that was a misunderstanding. And it was a big like, in the court, because it was full, packed, obviously, and because it was insane.
Judge Chen's 78-page ruling reflected the courtroom shock. He wrote that Secretary Noem's rationale for swiftly terminating the protected status, quote, smacks of racism. Chen added that there was no evidence that TPS holders are members of Tren de Aragua. The first Trump administration also attacked TPS. It tried, unsuccessfully, to do away with the status for 98% of beneficiaries. But Judge Chen noted that it was the first time in the TPS program's 35-year history that an administration tried to end an extension already in place. Emmy McLean, an attorney for the ACLU of Northern California representing the plaintiffs in the case, underscored this fact.
The decision to rescind an extension that had been granted by a prior administration is entirely unprecedented. It has never been done before. There is no basis in law for it to be done now.
It all really highlights just how unstable the status can be. After all, it was always intended to be temporary.
Go straight on.
TPS isn't automatic. Applicants go through vetting. Those who have been convicted of a felony or at least 2 misdemeanors are not eligible. Plus, TPS is not meant to provide a path to citizenship or even residency. For a TPS holder to gain permanent residency, they would need to apply for a change of status, like having an asylum case approved or obtaining a working visa. These other statuses can be difficult to obtain, and some can take years. For Cecilia, it's been 8 years and counting. With a life already in the U.S., the thought of returning to Venezuela is unfathomable to her.
Even if I decided to come back to Venezuela today, the life and the person I was doesn't exist anymore.
Like Cubans who have also escaped autocrats, who conceal a repressive government under the guise of socialism, Venezuelan Americans tend to skew to the right politically.
Like so many other Venezuelans, she cheered when Donald Trump was elected because of his tough approach to policies, such as his promise to crack down on a violent Venezuelan criminal organization.
I would say the majority of the immigrants here in our community bought into this platform of safety, security, and protected borders for our country.
So, it's no surprise that Trump got more than 60% of the vote in Doral, where over 85% of the population is Latino. I tried to speak to these voters in April, in Miami.
Bueno, ahora sí a ella. Tú haz la pregunta y yo te digo sí o no. Bueno, perfecto.
But hardly anyone wanted to talk on the record. Too much tension, too much fear. In mid-April, the Miami Herald reported that Doral may sign a contract with ICE. It would allow the city's police to carry out immigration enforcement, including interrogations, detentions, and processing. While some Trump supporters feel betrayed by DHS's actions, others feel optimistic.
Mi nombre es Cristian Monjans.
Cristian is the director of the Venezuelan American Chamber of Commerce, though he spoke to me from his personal opinion. And though he wasn't explicit about his personal political affiliation, he's sympathetic to the administration's America First mandate.
Yo creo que el país, Estados Unidos, votó por Donald Trump bajo una idea de America First, una idea de vamos primero a velar por los intereses de los Estados Unidos.
And he believes that Trump's initial measures will eventually benefit the country, put it back to its #1 status.
Yo soy de los que soy optimista de que muchos de estos movimientos bruscos que están sucediendo en este momento nos van a llevar a un panorama mucho mejor y nos va a poner a Estados Unidos nuevamente en el país #1.
As for TPS, Cristian believes the program was offered too liberally.
Hay gente talentosa, gente extraordinaria que lamentablemente por no empezar otro proceso migratorio posiblemente vaya a tener que irse del país.
Cristian says there are really talented people in our community that sadly will have to leave the country because they haven't started another immigration process. Furthermore, he stressed that TPS is meant to be temporary, suggesting it isn't the right path.
There is no website that I can apply and say how to go to the U.S. the right way. That doesn't exist.
Cecilia concedes that there are investor visas for the rich, green cards through marriage if you happen to fall in love with a U.S. citizen, and of course, asylum. But as has been her case, a pending asylum application is no guarantee of a permanent legal status. She's hopeful that Judge Chen's temporary ruling and the bigger fight to protect TPS are stepping stones to broader immigration reform.
These battles that set up precedents that are going to come out in 2 to 3 years, whenever it comes, when we do find permanent solutions that provide dignity and stability to the immigrant community, we will be one of the part of the well-known chapter of the immigration fight in this country.
Turn right.
In February, days after Secretary Noem's termination of the TPS extension, House members from both parties reintroduced the Venezuelan Adjustment Act. The bill would provide a path to lawful permanent residence for Venezuelans who have been in the U.S. since before December 31st, 2021, and for those who meet a slew of other criteria related to their status. Like any bill, it would need to pass both houses of Congress before becoming law.
Aquí hoy todos somos venezolanos.
Back at the vigil in Doral, Adelis reminded attendees what's at stake.
I want to tell Venezuelans that they are not alone, that we are organizing, that now is not only Venezuelans. 17 diasporas have TPS in this country, and more than 11 million immigrants need an immigration reform, and we are not giving up.
We're going to keep fighting for the immigration reform in this country, and we will make it happen. Thank you.
Comprehensive immigration reform. That's the ultimate goal. For Adelis, for Cecilia, and for many of the hundreds of thousands of TPS holders who are making a life here. Jose, the TPS holder we heard from at the very top of the show, hopes he can continue to contribute here, as so many immigrants have.
Mis hijos se han criado en este país, han visto la felicidad en este país, han visto la libertad en este país, y es difícil explicarle lo que está pasando.
Jose's kids have had a chance to grow up in the U.S., and they've experienced freedom, he says. So it's difficult to explain to them what's happening.
Realmente ahorita tenemos mucha esperanza, confiamos en la libertad y esperamos no ser perseguidos de nuevo.
Still, the initial triumph of the lawsuit and the ongoing fight with Cecilia, Adelis, and others at the front gives Jose a dose of hope. He trusts freedom will prevail.
Now, for the second part of our show, we're going to speak about the late Papa Francisco, Pope Francis, a man whose humility changed the papacy forever and who made the defense of immigrants a central part of his message and mission.
On Holy Sunday or Easter Sunday, the Pope blessed a crowd from the balcony at St. Peter's Basilica.
He is